The hotel keycard beeped green. Scarlett pushed open the door to what should have been her sanctuary after 14 hours of travel, her mind still racing with tomorrow's presentation. But the suite wasn't empty. In the amber glow of a single lamp, a man stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, shirtless, his silhouette carved by shadows and city lights. He turned. Their eyes met. Time fractured. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, his dark eyes holding storms she shouldn't want to weather. "Wrong room," she whispered, but her feet refused to move. He stepped closer, and she saw it. The raw pain beneath his devastating beauty, the kind of hurt that recognized its mirror in her soul. Or, his voice was velvet and smoke, maybe it's exactly the right one. That's when he made the offer that would unravel everything she thought she knew about desire, danger, and the price of saying yes to the impossible. The Belmont Hotel rose like a glass cathedral into the New York night sky, its 1,000 windows glittering like diamonds against the velvet darkness. Scarlett Monroe pressed her hand against the cool leather seat of the town car, steadying herself as exhaustion and exhilaration warred in her chest. 28 years old, and she was about to present her revolutionary sustainable architecture design to Ashford Enterprises, the most powerful development company on the East Coast. If she won this contract, everything would change. No more scraping by, no more proving herself in boardrooms full of men who saw her skin color before her brilliance. This was her moment. 52nd Street, miss, the driver announced, his voice pulling her back to the present. Scarlett emerged onto the sidewalk, the September breeze carrying the scent of expensive perfume and ambition. The Belmont's lobby was a masterpiece of Art Deco elegance, gold leaf ceilings, marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, and crystal chandeliers that scattered light like captured stars. She approached the reception desk, her fingers trembling slightly as she handed over her identification. "Monroe! Scarlett Monroe! I have a reservation for 3 nights." The receptionist, a polished woman with silver hair and kind eyes, typed efficiently. "Ah, yes, Miss Monroe. Suite 714. You're here for the Ashford presentation tomorrow." "Yes." Scarlett's voice was steadier than her heartbeat. "Wonderful. You'll find everything you need in the suite. Breakfast is served from 6 to 11, and if you require anything, don't hesitate to call the concierge." She slid 2 key cards across the marble counter. "Enjoy your stay." The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt both eternal and instantaneous. Scarlett's reflection stared back at her from the polished brass doors, her natural hair pulled into an elegant twist, her honey-brown skin glowing despite the fatigue, her amber eyes bright with determination. She'd worn her power suit on the plane, tailored navy blue that emphasized her curves while commanding respect. Tomorrow, she'd switched to the burgundy Armani that made her feel invincible. Tonight, she just needed sleep. Suite 714. She found the door at the end of a hushed corridor where thick carpet absorbed sound and wall sconces cast warm, intimate light. Her keycard hovered over the reader. 1 beep, green light. Click. Scarlett pushed open the door, her eyes adjusting to the dimness within. The suite was magnificent. She could see that much. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated the far wall, framing Manhattan's glittering skyline like a living painting. But something was wrong. There was a single lamp burning, amber and low, on a side table, and there, silhouetted against those impossible windows, stood a man, a half-naked man. Scarlett's breath caught, suspended between shock and something far more dangerous. He hadn't heard her enter. His back was to her, a back that belonged in Renaissance paintings, all sculpted muscle and golden skin stretched over perfect symmetry. His shoulders were broad, tapering to a narrow waist where expensive suit pants hung low on his hips. dark hair, almost black, fell slightly too long at his nape. One hand gripped a crystal tumbler of amber liquid, whiskey, probably scotch, while the other pressed flat against the window as if he could touch the city beyond. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to apologize, to retreat before this man turned around and she had to explain why she'd invaded his privacy. But Scarlett couldn't move. Something in his posture held her captive, a tension, a heaviness, a grief so palpable it seemed to pulse in the air between them. This wasn't a man relaxing in his hotel suite. This was a man barely holding himself together. Then he turned. Time didn't just slow, it shattered. His face was the kind that stopped traffic and started wars, sharp cheekbones that could cut diamonds, a jaw carved from marble, and lips that were somehow both severe and sensual. But it was his eyes that destroyed her, dark grey, like storm clouds over the ocean, and filled with a raw pain that made her chest physically ache. He was probably 35, maybe 36, old enough to have earned those shadows, young enough to make them tragic. "Wrong room," Scarlett whispered, but her feet had grown roots. Those storm-grey eyes travelled over her slowly, not with the crude assessment she'd endured countless times, but with genuine curiosity. Recognition flickered across his features, not of her specifically, but of something she represented. Another person, another witness to whatever private hell he was enduring. Apparently, his voice was low, cultured, with the faint gravel of expensive whiskey and expensive heartbreak. He didn't move to cover himself, didn't rush to explain, just watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. "I'm sorry, I must have—" Scarlett glanced at the door, then at her keycard, confusion cutting through the strange spell. "The front desk gave me this room." 714, he asked. "Yes." Something flickered in his expression, amusement maybe, or resignation. "You're in the right place. I'm in 716. Apparently we're neighbors." He took a slow sip of his scotch, never breaking eye contact. "Though this isn't my room either. I just—" He trailed off, his gaze returning to the windows, to the glittering city beyond. "I needed to see something beautiful. Needed to remember that beauty still exists." The admission was so raw, so unexpected, that Scarlett forgot to guard herself. "What happened?" He laughed, a sound without joy. "The usual. Betrayal. Lies. The discovery that the person you trusted most was systematically destroying everything you built." He turned fully toward her now, and in the lamplight she could see the faint redness around his eyes, the tight line of his jaw. "You ever have someone look you in the eye and promise forever, then discover they've been selling your secrets to your competitors for 18 months? Scarlett's heart constricted. She knew betrayal, knew its taste, its weight, its lingering poison. "Once," she said quietly, "my ex-boyfriend stole my portfolio and presented my designs as his own. Got the job I'd been chasing for 3 years, understanding passed between them like a current. Then you know," he said. "You know what it's like when the person who should protect you becomes the person you need protection from." "Yes." The word was barely a breath. Silence settled, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two wounded creatures recognizing each other in the dark. "I should go," Scarlett said, though she still hadn't moved. "Let you have your privacy." "Or," he said, and something shifted in his voice, something dangerous and desperate and thrilling, "you could stay just for a moment. I find I'm tired of being alone with my thoughts." Every rational cell in her body screamed warning. This was how mistakes happened, how professional women derailed their careers, how hearts got broken. But Scarlett was so tired of being rational, so tired of being careful. And this man, with his devastating face and his broken eyes, made her want to be reckless. "One drink," she heard herself say, "then I really do need to sleep." I have the most important meeting of my life tomorrow." His smile was slight but genuine. "Ashford Enterprises presentation?" Her eyes widened. "How did you—" "I'm staying on this floor for the same reason. Big meeting tomorrow." He moved to the bar, his movements fluid despite the alcohol he'd clearly consumed. "What's your poison?" "Red wine, if there is any." "There's always wine." He poured a generous glass of Bordeaux, then refilled his scotch. When he handed her the wine, their fingers brushed, and electricity arced between them, sharp, unexpected, undeniable. Scarlett took the glass with trembling fingers, acutely aware of his bare chest, the way lamplight played across his skin, the intoxicating scent of his cologne, cedar and bergamot, and something darker, more primal. "You never told me your name," she said, trying to anchor herself in normalcy. "Will." He didn't offer a last name. "And you're Scarlett. It's embroidered on your carry-on." She glanced at where she'd dropped her bag by the door. "Observant. Occupational hazard." He gestured toward the sofa, cream leather, impossibly expensive. "Please, sit. Tell me about this crucial meeting." Scarlett hesitated, then moved deeper into what was technically his suite. She settled onto the sofa, tucking her legs beneath her, suddenly conscious of how intimate this was. "I'm an architect, sustainable design specialist. Tomorrow I'm presenting a concept for a mixed-use development that could revolutionize urban green spaces. If I win this contract—" She stopped, surprised by her own openness. "It changes my life." "Then you'll win it," Will said with absolute certainty. He sat on the opposite end of the sofa, leaving respectable space between them, though the air still crackled with awareness. "Anyone with that much fire in their eyes doesn't accept defeat." "You can't know that." "I can." His gaze held hers. "I've been in business for 15 years, Scarlett. I know passion when I see it, and I know the difference between people who want success and people who'll bleed for it. You're the latter." Heat bloomed in her chest, dangerous and intoxicating. "What about you? What do you do when you're not breaking into hotel suites to drink alone?" "Investment and development." He swirled his scotch, watching the liquid catch light. "I build things. Or I did. Before I discovered my partner, personal and professional, was systematically undermining everything I'd created. Your fiancé." "Was." The correction was knife-sharp. "As of about 6 hours ago." Scarlett's breath caught. This wound was fresh then, still bleeding. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." "I'm not." He met her eyes, and she saw it, the lie. He was devastated. Fury and heartbreak warred across his features before he locked them down. "She did me a favor. Now I know. Now I can protect what's mine." "But you lost her." "I lost an illusion." He drained his scotch, then set the glass down with careful precision. "Turns out she was never really mine. Just borrowed. On loan from my competitor, gathering intelligence, making me weak." The bitterness in his voice made Scarlett want to reach for him, to offer comfort, but she didn't. Instead, she said, "Then she was a fool. Because betraying someone like you, someone with this much—" She gestured vaguely, unable to articulate the intensity he radiated. "This much presence, this much power. That's not just cruel, it's idiotic." Will laughed, and this time there was genuine humor in it. "Careful, Scarlett. You're making me sound like a decent man." "Maybe you are. Maybe." He tilted his head, studying her with unnerving focus. "Or maybe I'm exactly the kind of man your mother warned you about. The kind who makes deals, who uses people, who sees everything as a transaction." "Is that what you see when you look at me?" she challenged. "A transaction?" "No." The word was quiet, honest, devastating. "I see someone real. Someone who walked into the wrong room at exactly the right moment." He leaned forward slightly, his elbows on his knees, closing the distance between them without touching. "Tell me something, Scarlett. If I offered you something impossible, something that could guarantee your success tomorrow, but came with conditions, would you take it?" Her pulse hammered. "What kind of conditions?" "The complicated kind." His eyes burned into hers. "I need something. You need something. Maybe we can help each other." "You don't even know me." "I know enough." He gestured toward her with one elegant hand. "You're brilliant, ambitious, and you have a presentation tomorrow that matters more than anything. You're also walking into a room full of people who'll judge you before you open your mouth. Not because you're not the best, I'd bet my fortune you are, but because that's how this world works." Scarlett's jaw tightened. "I've dealt with prejudice before. I'll deal with it again." "I'm sure you will. But what if you didn't have to? What if you walked in with undeniable credibility, with connections they couldn't ignore?" He paused, letting his words sink in. "What if you walked in as my fiancé?" The word hung between them like a grenade. "Excuse me?" Scarlett's voice was ice. "Hear me out." Will held up a hand. "I need a public relationship. Fast. My ex destroyed my reputation with her betrayal, made me look like a fool who couldn't see what was right in front of him. I have a merger pending, worth $500 million, and the board is questioning my judgment. But if I showed up with someone new, someone brilliant and beautiful and absolutely real, it changes the narrative. I'm not heartbroken. I'm not foolish. I simply found someone better. And what do I get besides being paraded around as your trophy? The Ashford contract." He said it simply. "Guaranteed. My company owns the project you're presenting for tomorrow. If you say yes, the job is yours. Plus 6 months of access to the most powerful circles in New York, contacts, opportunities, everything you need to build the career you deserve." Scarlett's mind reeled. This was insane, impossible, wrong in 1,000 ways, and yet— "Fake engagement," she said slowly. "For 6 months. I get the contract. You get respectability. Then what?" "Then we part ways, amicably, publicly. I'll make sure your career is bulletproof before we end it." He leaned back, giving her space to think. "Full transparency. I'm offering this because I'm desperate, and because something about you, Scarlett Monroe, tells me you're someone I can trust, even if I just met you, even if this is crazy. It is crazy. The best things usually are. She should say no, should walk out, should let tomorrow unfold naturally, with just her talent and her designs." But Scarlett was so tired of fighting alone, so tired of being good enough, but never quite enough. "One condition," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This stays professional, no actual romance, no crossing lines. We're business partners, nothing more." Something flickered in Will's eyes. Disappointment maybe, or challenge. "Agreed. Though I have to warn you, Scarlett, we'll have to be convincing, public appearances, strategic touches, maybe even a kiss or two for the cameras." Heat flooded her body at the thought of kissing him, but she kept her expression neutral. "I can handle professional intimacy." "Can you?" He stood in one fluid motion, then extended his hand. "Then we have a deal." Scarlett stood as well, her legs unsteady, her mind screaming that this was a mistake. But when she placed her hand in his, when his long fingers closed around hers with firm warmth, something clicked into place. Something that felt less like a transaction and more like destiny. "Deal," she whispered. Will's smile was slow, dangerous, and absolutely mesmerizing. "Then welcome to your new life, Scarlett. I promise it won't be boring." He pulled her slightly closer, not invading her space but erasing the professional distance they'd just agreed to maintain. "We start tomorrow, 9 o'clock. I'll meet you in the lobby. Wear something that says, 'I own this city,' and prepare yourself, because the moment we walk in together, Everything changes. For both of us. I'm ready. Are you? His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a touch so light it might have been accidental, except nothing about this man seemed accidental. Because once we do this, Scarlett, there's no going back. Whatever happens in the next 6 months, it'll mark us, change us, maybe even destroy us. Or save us, she countered, or that. He released her hand slowly, reluctantly. You should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. Scarlett moved toward the door, her body vibrating with adrenaline and something far more dangerous. At the threshold, she turned back. Will stood exactly where she'd left him, backlit by the Manhattan skyline, still shirtless, still devastating, still dangerous. Will? Yes? Why me? Really? He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, because when you walked through that door, you looked at me like I was a person, not a name, not a fortune, not a scandal, just a man. I haven't been seen like that in a very long time. The honesty in his voice cracked something in her chest. Good night, Will. Good night, Scarlett. Sweet dreams of your future. She slipped into the hallway, her keycard finally guiding her to her actual suite 2 doors down. Only when she was inside, door locked, back pressed against the wood, did she let herself process what had just happened. She'd agreed to a fake engagement with a stranger. A devastatingly handsome, clearly powerful, probably dangerous stranger who just offered her everything she'd ever wanted. This was either the smartest decision of her life or the one that would destroy her completely. Outside her window, New York glittered with infinite possibilities. Tomorrow, she'd stand in front of Ashford Enterprises, not as a hopeful architect, but as Will's fiancé, as someone with power. Scarlett moved to her window, pressing her palm against the cool glass, mirroring Will's earlier posture. Somewhere in this building, 2 doors away, he was doing the same thing. 2 strangers bound by a desperate deal. 6 months. She could survive 6 months of pretending, of strategic touches and careful performances, of not falling for a man who looked at her like she was salvation and danger all at once. She had to. Because the alternative, losing herself in those storm-grey eyes, in that broken honesty, in the electric pull between them, that would cost her everything. Her phone buzzed. An email from an unknown sender. Contract attached. Read it. Sign it. Bring it tomorrow. And Scarlett, don't forget, in 6 months we walk away. No matter what happens. No matter what we feel. That's the deal. W. She downloaded the attachment with trembling fingers, scanning the legal language that would bind her to this beautiful stranger. Every clause was clear. Every expectation outlined, every exit strategy mapped. It was perfect, professional, safe. So why did Scarlett feel like she'd just agreed to something that would shatter her completely? She signed with her stylus, sent it back, and whispered to the city, "No going back now." In Suite 716, Will watched his phone light up with Scarlett's signed contract. He'd expected relief. Instead, he felt something far more dangerous. Anticipation. This woman, this brilliant, beautiful, unexpected woman, had just agreed to save him. In 6 months, he'd let her go. He'd have to. But first, he'd have to survive not falling in love with her. And as he stared at her signature, elegant and bold across the digital document, Will realized he might have just made the most catastrophic mistake of his life. Because Scarlett Monroe wasn't a business transaction. She was an earthquake, and he'd just invited her to shake his entire world. Tomorrow would change everything, for both of them. There was no turning back now. 48 hours could change everything. Scarlett had always known this intellectually, understood that life pivoted on moments, on decisions made in heartbeats. But she'd never felt it in her bones until now, standing in front of the floor-length mirror in her new apartment overlooking Central Park, watching a stylist arrange diamonds around her throat like captured starlight. "Breathtaking," Celeste, the stylist Will had sent, murmured in her elegant French accent. She stepped back, admiring her work with the critical eye of someone who dressed Manhattan's elite. Mr. Ashford will not be able to look away. That was the problem. Will already couldn't look away, and neither could she. The presentation had been flawless. Scarlett had walked into that boardroom with Will's hand resting possessively at the small of her back, and every eye had shifted, not with judgment, but with curiosity, with respect, with the instant credibility that came from being claimed by William Ashford III. She delivered her sustainable architecture proposal with precision and passion, and when the board had unanimously approved it, Will had pulled her into an embrace that lasted 3 seconds too long to be purely professional. "Congratulations, darling," he'd whispered against her temple, his lips barely brushing her skin. "You were magnificent." The word darling had been for their audience. The tremor in his voice had been real. Now, 2 days later, she was preparing for their first official public appearance as a couple, a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. 1,000 of New York's most powerful would be watching, judging, dissecting every glance and touch between them. "The dress is perfection," Celeste continued, adjusting the midnight blue silk that clung to Scarlett's curves before flowing into an elegant train. "Valentino always knows how to make a woman look like she conquered empires." Scarlett studied her reflection. The woman staring back was someone new, someone polished and powerful, with diamonds at her throat and confidence in her eyes. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, a few strategic curls framing her face. Her makeup was flawless, emphasizing her amber eyes and the rich warmth of her brown skin. She looked like she belonged in Will's world. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. Her phone chimed, a text from Will. "Car arrives in 20 minutes. Are you ready?" She typed back, "As ready as I'll ever be." His response was immediate. "You'll be extraordinary. You always are. W." Something warm and dangerous unfurled in her chest. She'd seen Will twice since that night in the hotel, once for the presentation, once for a casual lunch photographed by 3 different tabloids. Both times he'd been the perfect gentleman, attentive but not possessive, affectionate but not invasive. Every touch had been calculated, every smile timed for maximum effect. And yet, beneath the performance, Scarlett felt the current. The electricity that had sparked between them that first night hadn't diminished. If anything, it had grown stronger, more dangerous, more impossible to ignore. "You are thinking of him," Celeste observed with a knowing smile. "This is good. When a woman thinks of her man, her skin glows. The cameras will love you tonight." "He's not my man," Scarlett said automatically. "We're just in love?" Celeste's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Yes, I have read the articles. Whirlwind romance. Love at first sight. Very romantic, very believable." She paused, then added more gently, "But ma chérie, what I see in your eyes when you speak of him, that is also very real." Scarlett's breath caught. "You're wrong." "Perhaps." Celeste began packing her supplies. "Or perhaps you are not yet ready to admit the truth. Either way, tonight you will shine, and Mr. Ashford, he will be a very fortunate man." After Celeste left, Scarlett stood alone in her new apartment, a space Will had insisted on providing, a gorgeous 2-bedroom with views of the park that cost more per month than she used to make in 6. The contract had been explicit. During their engagement, she would live as his fiancée would live. Access to his resources, his world, his life. In 6 months, it would all disappear. She'd have her career, her contacts, her independence. But this apartment, these diamonds, this life, temporary, borrowed, not really hers. She touched the necklace at her throat, $300,000 worth of diamonds that felt both weightless and impossibly heavy. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Monroe, Mr. Ashford is here." Her heart kicked against her ribs. "Send him up." She'd expected Will to wait in the car, but of course he wouldn't. He was thorough, meticulous. Every detail of their relationship had to be perfect, including the moment he collected her for their first gala. When she opened the door, the air left her lungs. Will stood in the hallway wearing a custom tuxedo that had probably cost more than her first car, midnight black, perfectly tailored to his lean, powerful frame. His dark hair was styled just carelessly enough to look effortless, and his storm-grey eyes locked onto her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. For 3 full seconds, neither of them spoke. They just stared, caught in the gravitational pull that had been building since that first night. Scarlett. Her name was a prayer and a curse on his lips. "You're—" He trailed off, his usual eloquence deserting him. "God, you're devastating. So are you." The admission escaped before she could stop it. Something flickered in his expression, pleasure, possession, and something darker, more dangerous. He stepped into her apartment, closing the door behind him with deliberate slowness. "We need to discuss tonight." Discuss what? We smile. We dance. We convince everyone we're madly in love. She tried for lightness, but her voice betrayed her. Too breathless, too affected. "It's not that simple." Will moved closer, and she caught his scent, cedar and bergamot, and something uniquely him. "There will be press, hundreds of cameras, questions about how we met, why so sudden, whether this is real." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "And there will be touching, more than we've done so far. I'll need to hold you, dance with you, maybe kiss you." The word kiss hung between them like a live wire. "We agreed to professional intimacy," Scarlett reminded him, though her pulse was racing. "I can handle it." "Can you?" He was close enough now that she could see the gold flecks in his grey eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Because I'm not sure I can." Honesty. Raw and unexpected, it disarmed her completely. "Will—" "This was supposed to be simple," he continued, his voice dropping to something intimate, confessional. "A business arrangement, 6 months of mutually beneficial performance. But Scarlett, when I look at you—" He reached up, his fingers hovering near her cheek but not quite touching. "When I look at you, nothing feels simple. Nothing feels fake." Her breath caught. "The contract says we end this in 6 months. I know. I wrote it." His hand fell away. "But it doesn't account for this, for whatever's happening between us." "Nothing's happening," she lied. "Isn't it?" His smile was sad, knowing. "Then why does my heart race every time you walk into a room? Why do I find myself counting the hours until I see you again? Why does the thought of you leaving in 6 months feel like someone's carved out my chest?" "Stop." Scarlett pressed her hand against his chest, needing distance and connection all at once. Beneath her palm, his heart thundered. "You're grieving, you're hurt, you're confusing gratitude with something else." "Am I?" He covered her hand with his, holding it against his heart. "Or are you trying to convince yourself this isn't real because real would be terrifying?" He was right. God help her, he was right. This was terrifying, because somewhere between signing that contract and standing in this moment, Scarlett had started to fall. And falling for Will Ashford, brilliant, broken, impossibly complicated Will, was the one thing she absolutely could not afford. "We have a gala to attend," she said, her voice barely steady. "We should go." Something shuddered in his expression. Professional Will returned, smooth and controlled. "You're right, of course." He stepped back, offering his arm with elegant formality. "Shall we convince New York that we're madly in love?" "That's the deal. That's the deal," he echoed. But his eyes said something different. His eyes said, "What if it's not pretend anymore?" The Metropolitan Museum of Art had been transformed into a glittering wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors, while thousands of white roses created an ethereal forest throughout the Temple of Dendur Wing. Women in couture gowns drifted like exotic birds, their jewels catching light with every movement. Men in tuxedos clustered in groups, discussing mergers and markets with the casual confidence of those born to power. And at the center of it all, cameras flashed like lightning. "Smile," Will murmured as they approached the entrance, his hand settling at the small of her back with possessive warmth. "And remember, you're the woman who captured my heart. Act accordingly." Scarlett tilted her face toward his, letting adoration soften her features. "How's this?" His eyes darkened. "Dangerous." "Absolutely dangerous." Then louder, for the benefit of the nearby reporters, "You're radiant tonight, darling." The endearment sent shivers down her spine. She leaned into him, playing her role perfectly. "Only because you make me happy." Flash, flash, flash. Cameras captured every angle, every touch, every manufactured moment of intimacy. "Mr. Ashford, how did you two meet?" A reporter thrust a microphone toward them. Will's smile was easy, practiced. "She walked into my life when I least expected it and changed everything. Sometimes fate has better timing than we do." "Miss Monroe, how does it feel to be engaged to one of New York's most eligible bachelors?" Scarlett met the reporter's eyes with calm confidence. "It feels like I found my partner, someone who sees me, challenges me, and makes me want to be better. The rest, the money, the status, the attention, that's just noise. What matters is him." Will's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly against her back. When she glanced up at him, his expression held something raw, something real, something that had nothing to do with their agreement. "Beautiful answer," he said softly, just for her. "Almost believed it myself." "Maybe you should," she replied, then immediately regretted it. Too honest, too revealing. They moved into the gala proper, and Scarlett felt the weight of 1,000 gazes. Women assessed her with envy and calculation. Men studied her with curiosity and appreciation, but everyone's attention eventually returned to Will, because Will Ashford commanded rooms the way gravity commanded planets. "William," a silver-haired man in an impeccable tuxedo approached, his smile sharp. "Good to see you recovered from that unfortunate business, and this must be the woman who's captured your wandering heart." "Senator Morrison." Will's tone was pleasant, but edged with warning. "May I introduce my fiancée, Scarlett Monroe?" "Scarlett, the senator sits on the board of several companies I work with." "Charmed." Morrison's eyes traveled over Scarlett with barely concealed assessment. "Architect, aren't you? Working on that sustainable development project?" "Yes, Senator. We're reimagining urban spaces to balance luxury with environmental responsibility." "Ambitious." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Tell me, Miss Monroe, how long have you two been together? The engagement seemed rather sudden." "Nissim." The word carried weight, implications, judgment. Will tensed beside her, but Scarlett smiled serenely. "Senator, when something is right, time becomes irrelevant. Some people date for years and never truly know each other. Others recognize their person immediately. Will and I, we're the latter, and honestly I wouldn't change a single moment of our whirlwind." "Well said." A woman materialized beside Morrison, elegant 50s with the kind of beauty that money preserved. "I'm Vivian Ashford, Will's mother, and you, my dear, are exactly what my son needs." Will's surprise was evident. "Mother, I didn't realize you'd be here." Wouldn't miss my son's debut with his new love. Vivian's eyes held knowing amusement. Besides, I wanted to meet the woman brave enough to take on the Ashford legacy. She offered her hand to Scarlett. "Welcome to the family, Scarlett, though I suspect you'll find us exhausting." "I'm up for the challenge," Scarlett replied, warming to this unexpected ally. "I'm sure you are." Vivian glanced between them, her smile softening. "You're good for him. I can see it. There's light in his eyes again. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." After Vivian and Morrison drifted away, Will pulled Scarlett toward the dance floor. "That was masterful. You handled Morrison perfectly." "He was testing me." "Everyone will test you. That's how this world works." Will drew her into his arms as a waltz began, one hand at her waist, the other cradling hers. "But you're passing every test. You're extraordinary, Scarlett." They moved together with surprising ease, as if they'd danced 1,000 times before. Scarlett let herself sink into the moment, the music, the warmth of Will's body against hers, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. "Your mother likes me," she observed. "My mother is perceptive. She sees what I see." His thumb traced small circles on her waist, sending electricity through the silk of her dress. "She sees someone real, someone who doesn't want me for my money or my name, someone who'd be extraordinary with or without me." "Will, I know. The contract. 6 months. I remember." He pulled her slightly closer, breaking every rule of propriety. "But right now, in this moment, can we pretend it's real? Just for tonight?" Her heart cracked open. "And what happens in 6 months if we blur these lines?" "I don't know." His honesty was devastating. "Maybe we destroy each other. Maybe we destroy this. But Scarlett, I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this, whatever this is. It's dangerous. The best things usually are." He echoed his words from that first night. "Dance with me. Let me hold you. Let's just be. Tomorrow we can go back to the contract. But tonight?" "Tonight," she whispered, "we're real." His smile was brilliant, transforming his face from handsome to absolutely breathtaking. They danced through 3 songs, lost in each other, until reality intruded in the form of a tall, blonde woman who materialized at the edge of the dance floor. Will's entire body went rigid. "No," he breathed. Scarlett followed his gaze and understood immediately. The woman was stunning, model beautiful, with ice-blue eyes and the kind of elegance that came from generations of wealth. She wore crimson, a deliberate choice that screamed for attention, and she was walking straight toward them. "Will," the woman said, her voice honey and poison, "we need to talk." "Catherine." His voice could have frozen oceans. "You're not welcome here." "I'm never welcome anymore. Funny how that works when you tell the truth." Catherine's eyes shifted to Scarlett, assessing, dismissing. "So, this is the rebound. Pretty. I'm sure she'll do until you come to your senses." Scarlett felt Will's muscles coil, felt rage radiating from him in waves, but before he could respond, she stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of him, protecting him, even though he didn't need protection. "I'm Scarlett Monroe," she said with cool precision. "Will's fiancée, and you must be the past. Lovely to meet you. Brief, but lovely." Catherine's smile sharpened. "Fiancée? After 6 weeks? How romantic." "Tell me, Scarlett, does he talk about me when you're together? Does he mention how I know every inch of him, every scar, every secret, every weakness?" "No," Scarlett replied honestly. "He doesn't mention you at all, because you're irrelevant. A mistake he's already forgotten, but clearly he's all you can think about. That must be exhausting." Fury flashed across Catherine's perfect features. Enjoy him while you can. Men like Will don't change. He'll use you up and throw you away the moment you're no longer useful, just like he does with everyone. Catherine. Will's voice was lethal. Leave, now, before I have security remove you. Fine, I'm going. But William? She leaned close, her voice dropping to something intimate, cruel. When this little arrangement falls apart, and it will, don't come crawling back. I won't be waiting. She swept away, leaving destruction in her wake. Will stood frozen, his jaw tight, his eyes distant. Scarlett touched his arm gently. Will? I need air. He didn't wait for her response, just turned and strode toward the terrace, his control fracturing with every step. Scarlett followed, her heart breaking for him. She found him on a secluded balcony overlooking Central Park, his hands gripping the stone balustrade so tightly his knuckles had gone white. I'm sorry, he said without turning. That was planned. Scarlett came to stand beside him. She wanted to humiliate you, hurt you, make you feel small. She succeeded. His laugh was bitter. 6 weeks and I'm still this affected, still this raw. That's not weakness, Will. That's being human. Scarlett covered his hand with hers. She betrayed you. That doesn't heal overnight. And her showing up here, that was calculated cruelty. I should have protected you from that. From her. I can protect myself. She squeezed his hand. But for the record, you don't need to. I'm choosing to stand beside you. All of it, the glory and the mess, that's what partners do. He finally turned to face her, and in the moonlight his expression was absolutely unguarded. We're not really partners, Scarlett. We're two people playing roles, aren't we? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. I don't know anymore, she admitted. Maybe we started that way, but tonight, when I defended you, that wasn't acting. When you held me on that dance floor, that didn't feel like pretend. Maybe we've already crossed the line we swore we wouldn't. And if we have, his hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. What then? Then we're in trouble. Her voice wavered. Because in 6 months, this ends. The contract. Fuck the contract. The words were fierce, desperate. Scarlett, I can't do this anymore. Can't pretend I don't want you. Can't pretend this is just business. Catherine was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right about one. I do use people. I do protect myself by keeping everyone at arm's length. But you? His forehead touched hers, their breaths mingling. You make me want to stop protecting, want to risk, want to feel. Will, we can't we? His lips hovered millimeters from hers. Give me one good reason. One logical, rational reason why two consenting adults who feel this much can't explore it. Because it will hurt. Her voice broke. Because when this ends, and it has to end, we'll both be destroyed. And I can't survive being destroyed again, Will. I barely survived the last time. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Your ex, the one who stole your work. I loved him. The confession tasted like ash. Loved him completely, and he saw that love as weakness, used it, weaponized it. By the time I realized what he was doing, I'd lost everything, my designs, my reputation, my ability to trust. She pulled back, needing distance. I rebuilt myself piece by piece, and I swore I'd never let anyone close enough to destroy me again. I would never. You wouldn't mean to. She touched his face, memorizing the sharp angles, the storm-grey eyes, the lips she desperately wanted to kiss. But we both know how this ends. You get your merger, I get my career. We stage a breakup, and then I have to watch you move on while I'm left trying to forget what it felt like to be held by you. Or, his voice was rough with emotion, we change the contract, change the terms, make this real. Her heart stuttered. What? What if 6 months isn't the end? What if it's the beginning? What if we... Stop! Tears pricked her eyes. Please stop, because I want that. God will, I want that so much it terrifies me. But I can't. Not when you're still bleeding from Catherine. Not when I'm still learning to trust. Not when everything we've built is predicated on a lie. It's not a lie. He caught her hand, pressed it over his heart. This, what I feel when you're near, that's the only true thing in my life right now. Don't ask me to ignore it. Don't ask me to pretend it doesn't exist. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to wait. She held his gaze, letting him see her truth. If this is real, if we're real, then it'll still be real in 6 months. But we need time. Time to heal. Time to figure out who we are outside of this arrangement. Time to build something on foundation instead of desperation. He was quiet for a long moment, emotions warring across his face. Then slowly he nodded. 6 months. 6 months, she confirmed. We honor the contract. We keep our distance. We survive this without destroying each other. And then, when we're both free, when we're both whole, if you still want me, I'll still want you. The certainty in his voice made her chest ache. 6 months from now, 6 years from now, I'll want you. Because, Scarlett Monroe, you're not a rebound. You're not a transaction. You're the thing I didn't know I was searching for. A tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. Will caught it with his thumb, his touch unbearably tender. But you're right, he continued. We need time. We need healing. We need to do this right. He leaned in, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Chaste, reverent, devastating. So we'll wait. We'll honor the contract. We'll keep our professional distance. And in 6 months, his lips curved against her skin, I'm going to court you properly, take you to dinner, buy you flowers, make you fall in love with me the old-fashioned way. Presumptuous, she whispered, even as her heart sang. Accurate. He pulled back, his smile sad but genuine. Now, shall we return to the gala? Show Catherine and everyone else that we're unbreakable? Together? Always together. He offered his arm, and Scarlett took it, feeling both relief and regret in equal measure. They returned to the gala as a united front, smiling, dancing, playing their roles perfectly. But everything had changed. The touches were more careful, the smiles more guarded, the distance between them more pronounced. They'd drawn the line, 6 months of professional partnership. Nothing more. It should have felt like safety, like wisdom, like the right choice. Instead, it felt like mourning something they'd never actually had. Later, when Will dropped her at her apartment, he walked her to the door, but didn't come inside. Good night, Scarlett. Good night, Will. He hesitated, then cupped her face one more time. Thank you for tonight, for defending me, for being honest, for being you. Thank you for... She trailed off, unable to articulate everything he'd given her. Hope, possibility, a glimpse of what love could be when it wasn't weaponized. I know, he said softly. Then he was gone, walking away, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her treacherous heart. Scarlett closed her door, pressed her back against it, and let the tears come. 6 months had never seemed so long, or so impossible, because she'd just done the hardest thing in her life. She'd walked away from something real to protect them both from the inevitable hurt. But as she touched her lips, imagining the kiss they hadn't shared, Scarlett realized the painful truth. Waiting 6 months to be with Will might save them from one kind of destruction. But wanting him, needing him, loving him while pretending she didn't, that would destroy her in an entirely different way, and there was no contract clause that could protect her from that. 3 weeks. 21 days of carefully orchestrated appearances, strategic touches, and the most exquisite torture Scarlett had ever endured. Every gala, every dinner, every moment with Will felt like dancing on a razor's edge, one misstep away from falling completely. Now, standing in the marble foyer of Will's Hampton estate, watching rain lash against floor-to-ceiling windows. Scarlett wondered if they'd finally run out of safe ground. "The weather service says the storm will last through tomorrow," Will said, ending his call. He'd shed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and somehow looked even more devastating in casual disarray. "All roads out are flooding. We're stuck here." Stuck. The word tasted dangerous. They were supposed to attend a charity brunch, smile for cameras, then return to the city in separate cars, separate lives, safe distance. Instead, they were alone in this sprawling oceanfront mansion with nothing but time and temptation. "I can set you up in the guest wing," Will offered, though his eyes said he wanted anything but distance. "You'll have complete privacy." "That's probably best." Scarlett moved to the windows, watching waves crash against the beach with violent beauty. Behind her, she felt Will's presence like heat, like gravity, like inevitability. "Scarlett." His voice was closer now. "We need to talk about what's happening between us." "Nothing's happening. We're honoring the contract." "Are we?" He appeared beside her, his reflection in the glass showing the same hunger she felt. "Because every day gets harder. Every time I touch you for the cameras, I want to keep touching you. Every time you smile at me, even when no one's watching, I forget why we're waiting. Because it's smart. Because we need time." But her conviction wavered. Time. He laughed bitterly. "We've had 3 weeks of time. 3 weeks of pretending this isn't real. How much more time do we need to know what we already know?" Thunder cracked overhead, making Scarlett jump. Will's hand automatically reached for her waist, steadying her, and the touch ignited every nerve ending. "Will, don't want you? Too late, don't admit this is killing me. I just did. Don't touch you." His fingers tightened slightly. "That's the only thing I can still control." "Barely." The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Emergency generators kicked in, but they only powered essential systems, leaving most of the house in atmospheric darkness. Rain hammered the windows, wind howled, and suddenly the vast mansion felt impossibly intimate. "There are candles in the kitchen," Will said, his voice rough, "and a fireplace in the den. We should—" "Yes." Scarlett pulled away from his touch, needing space before she did something reckless. "Lead the way." The den was a masterpiece of masculine elegance. Leather furniture, dark wood, shelves lined with first editions. Will built a fire with practiced efficiency while Scarlett lit candles, their combined glow creating an intimacy that felt both magical and dangerous. "Wine?" Will asked, already pouring 2 glasses of red without waiting for her answer. They settled on opposite ends of the leather sofa, maintaining careful distance. But the firelight played tricks, casting shadows that made everything feel dreamlike, surreal, as if normal rules didn't apply here. "Tell me something true," Will said suddenly, "something you've never told anyone." Scarlett took a long sip of wine, considering. "Sometimes I'm terrified this is all temporary. That I'll wake up and still be the girl scraping by, fighting for every opportunity, constantly proving I deserve to exist in spaces that don't want me." "You do deserve it. You're the most talented architect I've ever met. You have to say that. I'm your fake fiancé." "I'd say it even if you weren't." He shifted slightly closer. "Your turn. Ask me something. Why did you really propose this arrangement? The truth, not the press release version." Will stared into the fire, flames reflecting in his grey eyes. "Because when you walked into that hotel room, you looked at me like I was worth saving, and I'd forgotten what that felt like, being seen as something other than a name, or a bank account, or a mistake." He met her gaze. "I knew in that moment that having you in my life, even temporarily, even artificially, would be better than the emptiness I was drowning in." The honesty stole her breath. "Will, I know. The contract. 6 months." "I remember. He drained his wine, poured another. "But Scarlett, these 3 weeks with you, they've been the most real thing in my life. Every fake smile we exchange has more truth than 3 years with Catherine. Every staged touch has more meaning than anything I thought was love. You're confusing gratitude with—" "Stop." He set down his glass with deliberate care. "Stop telling me what I'm feeling. I know the difference between gratitude and desire, between appreciation and need. And what I feel for you." He finally closed the distance between them, his thigh pressing against hers, his hand coming to rest on her knee. "This isn't gratitude." Scarlett's heart hammered. She should move away, should remind him of boundaries, should protect them both. Instead, she whispered, "What is it then?" "I don't know yet." His thumb traced circles on her knee, sending electricity through her entire body. "But I'd like to find out. Wouldn't you?" "Finding out breaks the contract." "Then we'll break it." His other hand came up to cup her face, tilting her toward him. "Scarlett, I'll give you everything we agreed to. The career, the contacts, the support. Nothing changes there. But this—" His thumb brushed her lower lip, and she gasped. "This I can't fake anymore, can't ignore, can't postpone for 6 months when every cell in my body is screaming that you're mine." "I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's." But her body betrayed her, leaning into his touch. "You're right." His forehead touched hers. "You're your own person, strong, brilliant, completely capable of existing without me." "But Scarlett—" His lips hovered near hers, so close she could taste the wine on his breath. "Could you exist without this? Without knowing what it feels like when I kiss you, when I touch you, when I show you exactly how desperately I want you?" She should say yes, should pull away, should save them both from the inevitable destruction. Instead, she whispered, "No." Will's control shattered. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole her breath, her thoughts, her carefully maintained distance. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined. It was better, deeper, more consuming. His lips moved against hers with desperate precision, tasting, exploring, claiming. When his tongue swept against hers, Scarlett moaned, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. They tumbled together on the leather sofa, all pretense abandoned. Will's hands mapped her body through the thin fabric of her dress, while Scarlett explored the hard planes of his chest, his shoulders, the strong column of his neck. Every touch ignited new fires. Every kiss deepened their addiction. "God, Scarlett!" Will's lips trailed down her throat, finding the sensitive spot below her ear that made her arch against him. "You're destroying me, absolutely destroying me." "Good," she gasped as his teeth grazed her collarbone. "Because you've been destroying me for weeks." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes dark with desire, and something deeper, more dangerous. "Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't want this. Tell me anything that will make me walk away before I cross every line we drew." Scarlett held his gaze, her chest heaving, her body singing with need. This was the moment, the choice, safety or surrender, protection or passion, the contract or her heart. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't tell you to stop because I don't want you to. I want this, want you. Have wanted you since that first night, and I'm tired of pretending I don't." Will's smile was triumphant, tender, absolutely devastating. "Thank God, because holding back from you has been the hardest thing I've ever done." This time when he kissed her, it was different, slower, deeper, loaded with promise. His hands moved with reverent care, unzipping her dress with agonizing slowness, as if unwrapping something precious. When the fabric pooled at her waist, exposing her black lace bra, Will pulled back to look at her with such raw appreciation that Scarlett felt beautiful in a way she never had before. "Perfect," he murmured, his fingers tracing the curve of her breast through lace. "You're absolutely perfect." Scarlett reached for his shirt, fumbling with buttons until he helped her, shrugging out of it impatiently. In the firelight, his body was a study in masculine beauty. Lean muscle, golden skin, the kind of strength that came from discipline rather than vanity. She pressed her hands against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palms. "Will," she breathed, "I need you to know something. This changes everything. There's no going back to professional distance after this." "I know." He lowered her onto the sofa cushions, his body covering hers with delicious weight. "I'm counting on it, because, Scarlett, I don't want professional distance. I want you, in my life, in my bed, in my future. And I know it's fast, and I know it's crazy, and I know we're supposed to wait." She silenced him with a kiss, pouring everything she couldn't say into it. Desire and fear and hope and need. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Scarlett whispered, "Then don't wait. Show me. Show me what this means. Show me you're real." Outside, the storm raged with primal fury. Inside, they created their own storm, one of tangled limbs and desperate kisses, of whispered names and gasping breath. Will worshipped her body with hands and mouth, learning every curve, every sensitive spot, every sound that made her arch and moan. Scarlett matched him touch for touch, kiss for kiss, claiming him as thoroughly as he claimed her. When they finally came together, moving as one in the firelight's glow, it felt like more than physical release. It felt like coming home, like finding something she hadn't known she was missing, like the universe clicking into perfect alignment. "Look at me," Will commanded, his voice rough with emotion. "I need you to see me, need you to know this is real." Scarlett opened her eyes, meeting his storm-grey gaze, and what she saw there stole her breath. This wasn't performance, wasn't strategy, wasn't anything they could explain away later. This was Will, completely unguarded, letting her see every vulnerable, desperate, aching part of him. "I see you," she whispered. "I see you, Will." They shattered together, clutching each other like anchors in a storm, their cries mingling with thunder and rain. And in that perfect, terrible moment, Scarlett knew the truth. She'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with the man she was supposed to leave in 6 months. Later, wrapped in Will's arms beneath a cashmere throw, listening to rain and the crackle of dying embers, Scarlett tried to reconcile what they'd done with what they'd promised. "No regrets," Will said, reading her thoughts. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I refuse to regret the best night of my life. Even though we broke the contract? Especially because we broke it." He tipped her face toward his. "That contract was about protection, about keeping safe. But Scarlett, I don't want safe anymore. I want real. I want you. And if that means risking pain, risking destruction, risking everything, it's worth it." "What about the merger? Your reputation?" "I'll handle it." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "The merger matters, yes, but it doesn't matter more than this, more than you." Scarlett wanted to believe him, wanted to sink into the security of his words. But she'd learned the hard way that promises made in passion often dissolved in daylight. "Will tomorrow—" "Tomorrow," he interrupted gently. "We'll figure it out, together. But tonight you're mine. And I'm yours. Let that be enough." So she did. She let the sound of his heartbeat beneath her ear, the warmth of his arms, the rightness of this moment be enough. Tomorrow would bring consequences, complications, reality. But tonight, wrapped in firelight and possibility, Scarlett let herself believe in happy endings. Even though her heart whispered that some storms caused damage no amount of shelter could prevent, morning arrived with cruel brightness. Scarlett woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and Will's arm draped possessively across her waist. For 3 perfect seconds, she existed in the blissful space between sleep and awareness, warm, safe, cherished. Then reality crashed in with the shrill ring of Will's phone. He stirred beside her, his voice rough with sleep. "Ignore it." But the phone kept ringing, insistent, urgent, wrong. Will cursed softly, reaching for the device on the side table. His expression shifted from drowsy contentment to sharp alertness in the space of a heartbeat. "Marcus, what's wrong?" Scarlett sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest, watching Will's face transform as he listened. Color drained from his features. His jaw went rigid. Those storm-grey eyes that had looked at her with such tenderness hours ago now blazed with fury. "How bad?" A pause. "Christ. No, don't respond yet. I'm coming back to the city now." He ended the call, sat motionless for 3 seconds, then exploded off the bed. "Get dressed. We need to leave immediately." "Will, what?" "There's a story. Front page of 3 tabloids and trending on every social media platform." He was already pulling on clothes with violent efficiency. "About you, about us, about everything." Ice flooded Scarlett's veins. "What kind of story?" He didn't answer, just thrust his phone toward her. The headlines screamed in bold letters. "From nobody to Mrs. Ashford, the calculated rise of Scarlett Monroe." Scarlett's hands trembled as she scrolled. The article was devastating, meticulous and cruel in equal measure. Her entire history laid bare: her childhood in a modest Detroit neighborhood, her father's bankruptcy, her mother's 3 jobs, every scholarship and loan that had gotten her through architecture school. Photos of her old apartment, her battered car, her life before Will, all positioned to imply she was a gold digger who'd orchestrated their entire relationship. But the worst part came in the final paragraphs. Sources close to Ashford Enterprises reveal the engagement may be nothing more than a strategic arrangement designed to salvage Will Ashford's reputation after his very public betrayal by Catherine Bordeaux. Monroe, a talented but struggling architect, secured the lucrative Ashford contract mere days after their engagement was announced. Coincidence or calculation? The implication was clear, damning, and partially true. Who leaked this? Scarlett's voice sounded hollow. "I don't know yet, but someone with access to confidential information." Will's expression was carved from granite. Someone who knew about the contract. The contract, their fake engagement. The arrangement that had become so real she'd forgotten it started as pretense. Now the world knew, or suspected, the truth, that she was bought, that their love was manufactured, that everything was a lie. "They're going to think I used you," she whispered. "They're going to think we used each other." Will's tone was bitter. "Which, technically, we did. That was the arrangement." The word arrangement stabbed like a knife, because last night hadn't felt like arrangement. Last night had felt like destiny, like truth, like the beginning of everything. Now it felt like the end. "I need to see my publicist, my lawyer, my board." Will was all business now, the tender lover from hours ago replaced by the ruthless businessman who'd built an empire. "You should do the same. Get ahead of this before it destroys your reputation completely." "Before?" Scarlett laughed without humor. "Will, it's already destroyed. Every architecture firm in this city will see me as the woman who slept her way to a contract. That's not what happened, isn't it?" She met his eyes, needing him to understand. "We made a deal. I got the job. We fell into bed. How is the tabloid version wrong?" "Because you earned that contract with your brilliant design. Because what happened between us last night was real." His voice rose with frustration. "Scarlett, you're one of the most talented architects I've ever met." With or without me, you would have succeeded. But I didn't succeed without you. I succeeded because of you, because of this arrangement, and now everyone knows it. She wrapped the sheet tighter around herself, suddenly feeling exposed in every possible way. I need to go. Need to figure out how to salvage what's left of my career. We'll figure it out together. Will, there is no together. Not anymore. The words tasted like ash. Whatever we had, real or fake, it's over. The tabloids made sure of that. No! He crossed to her in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. I refuse to let tabloid garbage destroy us. We knew this would be complicated. We knew there would be obstacles. But last night was a mistake. She forced the lie past numb lips, needing to protect herself before he could hurt her worse. We got caught up in the storm, in the moment, in the fantasy. But this? She gestured at his phone. This is reality. And in reality, I'm the woman who traded herself for success. That's what everyone will believe. That's what they'll always believe. I don't believe it. But your board will, your investors, your business partners. She pulled away from his touch, needing distance. The merger you need, the one worth $500 million. How do you think they'll react when they discover your engagement is a calculated PR move, when they realize you lied to them? Will's silence was answer enough. Exactly. Scarlett gathered her dress from the floor, trying to maintain dignity while her world collapsed. So here's what happens next. We end this, publicly, immediately. You blame me, say I deceived you, used you, whatever story salvages your reputation and your merger. I'll take the hit. My career is already destroyed anyway. Absolutely not. Will's voice was steel. I'm not throwing you to the wolves to save myself. Then we both go down. Is that what you want? She turned to face him, letting him see her pain, her resignation, her love, because despite everything, she loved him, and that made this so much worse. Will, you built something extraordinary. Don't let me be the reason you lose it. You're not— I am! The words exploded from her. From the moment I walked into your hotel room, I've been a complication, a risk, a liability. And last night, that wasn't salvation. It was the final nail in both our coffins. How can you say that? He looked genuinely bewildered. Last night was the first honest thing in my life in years. Honest? She laughed bitterly. Will, our entire relationship is built on a contract. A transaction. How is any of that honest? Because somewhere between signing that contract and last night, it stopped being fake, because I fell in love with you, Scarlett. Completely, irrevocably, catastrophically in love with you. The confession should have filled her with joy. Instead, it broke her heart. Don't, she whispered, don't say that. Why not? It's true. Because it doesn't matter. Tears threatened, but she refused to let them fall. Love doesn't pay mortgages or rebuild reputations or undo tabloid headlines. Love is what got us into this mess, and it won't get us out. Will stared at her, his expression cycling through disbelief, hurt, and finally anger. So that's it? You're just going to run? Going to let them win? Let Catherine and whoever leaked this story destroy what we built? What we built was always temporary. The contract said 6 months. We just accelerated the timeline. The contract. His laugh was sharp, dangerous. Right, the fucking contract. Apparently that's all this ever was to you. The accusation stung because it was so far from the truth, but Scarlett forced herself to remain impassive. Better he think her mercenary than know she was breaking. Better he hate her than love her and lose everything. Yes, she lied, the contract, which is now fulfilled. You got your respectability, I got my career boost. Time to end this before we both lose more. Something died in Will's eyes, the warmth, the vulnerability, the desperate hope. All of it shuttered behind cold professionalism. Fine, if that's how you want it. He moved to his dresser, pulled out a checkbook. "I'll have my lawyer draft termination papers. You'll receive everything we agreed upon. The full payment, the contract completion, letters of recommendation. I don't want your money. It's not about what you want. It's what we agreed to. I pay my debts, Scarlett, always." He signed a check with violent precision, then held it out. "Consider us even." The check represented more money than she'd made in 5 years. Blood money. Hush money, the price of her dignity. She took it because refusing would reveal too much, would show him that this was destroying her as thoroughly as it was destroying him. "Thank you," she managed, "for everything." "Don't." His voice could have cut diamonds. "Don't thank me. Don't apologize. Just go. Before I say something we'll both regret." Scarlett wanted to throw the check in his face, wanted to tell him she loved him, wanted to beg him to fight for them despite the impossibility. Instead, she dressed with shaking hands, gathered her belongings, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. Will stood by the window, silhouetted against morning light, looking as devastated and distant as he had that first night in the hotel. They'd come full circle, two broken people who'd briefly believed they could heal each other. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "last night wasn't fake. Not for me. None of it was." She didn't wait for his response. Couldn't bear to see whether her confession brought him pain or relief. She just left, closing the door on the only man she'd ever truly loved. The drive back to Manhattan was torture. Every mile increased the distance between her and Will, while headlines about their fake relationship proliferated across her phone. By the time her car service dropped her at her apartment, Scarlett's life had been dissected by 1,000 strangers who'd never met her, but knew with absolute certainty that she was a manipulative gold digger. Her phone rang continuously, reporters, former colleagues, numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored them all until a familiar name appeared. Victoria Chen, her mentor from graduate school, and one of the few people whose opinion truly mattered. "Victoria," Scarlett answered, bracing for disappointment. "Is it true?" Victoria's voice was careful, controlled. The engagement was arranged. Strategic? No point lying now. "Yes." A long pause. "And the Ashford contract?" "I earned it with my design, but yes, the relationship helped secure it." Another pause, longer this time. "I see, Scarlett, I need to be direct with you. The firm partnership we discussed, it's off the table. The other partners feel your judgment is questionable. They can't risk the association. The rejection shouldn't have hurt, not after everything else. But it did. I understand. I'm sorry. Truly, you're extraordinarily talented. But talent isn't enough when your reputation is compromised." Victoria softened slightly. "Give it time. Let this blow over. Eventually people will forget I'm the woman who sold herself for a contract." Scarlett's laugh was hollow. "I don't think they will, Victoria. This is my legacy now. My scarlet letter." "Then perhaps it's time to leave New York, start fresh somewhere else. London, Singapore, Dubai. There are opportunities everywhere for architects of your caliber." "Run away. Start over. Pretend the past 6 weeks never happened. Pretend she'd never met Will, never loved him, never believed in the possibility of something real." "Maybe," Scarlett said, though the thought of leaving felt like surrender. "Thank you for calling, Victoria, for being honest." After they hung up, Scarlett stood in her borrowed apartment, Will's apartment really, since he was paying for it, and finally let herself break. Great, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. Tears for her ruined reputation, for her lost opportunities, for the love she'd found and destroyed in the same breath, but mostly she cried for Will. For the pain in his eyes when she'd lied and told him their relationship was just business. For the love he'd confessed and she'd rejected. For the future they might have had if the world hadn't been so cruel. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Enjoy your 15 minutes of fame, sweetheart. You earned it. Catherine." Understanding crashed over her. Catherine had leaked the story. Catherine, who knew about the contract, who'd been close enough to Will to have access to confidential information, who had every reason to destroy them both. Scarlett's grief crystallized into fury. She'd let Catherine win. Let her jealous vendetta destroy something real and precious. And worse, she'd hurt Will in the process, pushed him away to protect him when what he needed was someone to fight beside him. Her phone rang again. Will's name appeared on the screen. Scarlett stared at it for 3 rings, 4, 5. Then just before it went to voicemail, she answered. "Scarlett." His voice was rough, urgent. "Don't sign anything. Don't make any statements. And whatever you do, don't leave New York." "Will, what? I found out who leaked the story. And I know how to fix this, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She closed her eyes, remembering his face in firelight, his confession of love, the way he'd held her like she was precious and fragile and strong all at once. She'd spent her whole life protecting herself, building walls, refusing to trust. Maybe it was time to try something different. Maybe it was time to be brave. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." Ulden, the Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered with 1,000 points of light. Crystal chandeliers, diamond jewelry, champagne flutes catching and reflecting illumination like captured stars. 500 of New York's elite had gathered for the Ashford Enterprises merger celebration, the business deal of the decade, finally complete. Everyone who mattered was here, including Scarlett Monroe. She stood at the edge of the crowd, wearing a gown the color of midnight, Alexander McQueen, borrowed from a stylist who owed Will a favor. Her natural hair fell in elegant waves past her shoulders, and she'd lined her eyes with enough defiance to armor herself against the stares, the whispers, the judgment that followed her like a shadow. 3 days had passed since Will's cryptic phone call. 3 days of silence while he orchestrated whatever plan would supposedly save them both. 3 days of Scarlett questioning whether trusting him had been wisdom or foolishness. Now, watching him work the room in a tuxedo that made him look like he owned the world, which, functionally, he did, Scarlett wondered if she'd been a fool to believe anything could fix the damage Catherine's exposé had caused. "You came." Will's voice, warm and low, materialized beside her. He didn't touch her, didn't presume intimacy, but his presence enveloped her like heat. "You asked me to trust you." Scarlett met his storm-gray eyes. "So I'm here, trusting, hoping you have a plan that doesn't involve me being publicly humiliated again." Quite the opposite. His smile was dangerous, promising. "Tonight, Scarlett, we tell the truth, all of it, and we let them decide what to believe." Before she could respond, the lights dimmed. A spotlight illuminated the stage where a podium stood waiting. The crowd quieted as Will's CFO, Marcus Chen, took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for celebrating this momentous merger with us tonight. Before we begin the formal presentations, our CEO, William Ashford, has a few words." Will squeezed Scarlett's hand once, brief, electric, full of meaning, then moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. When he reached the stage, that spotlight transformed him into something mythic, powerful, undeniable. "Thank you all for being here," Will began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space. "This merger represents years of work, sacrifice, and strategic vision. It secures Ashford Enterprises' position as the premier development company in North America. It's everything I've worked toward for the past decade." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "But before we celebrate this professional victory," Will continued, his gaze sweeping the room until it landed on Scarlett, "I need to address something personal. something that's been dissected by tabloids, debated on social media, and judged by people who have no understanding of the truth. The room's energy shifted. Predatory interest replaced polite attention. This was what they'd really come for. Scandal, drama, the fall of a powerful man. 6 weeks ago, Will said, his voice steady and clear, I made a business arrangement with Scarlett Monroe. A contract that stipulated she would pose as my fiancée for 6 months in exchange for professional opportunities and financial compensation. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Scarlett's chest constricted. He was confirming everything, exposing them both. This arrangement, Will continued, was proposed in a moment of desperation. I just discovered my previous fiancée, Catherine Bordeaux, had been systematically betraying me, selling confidential information to competitors, undermining business deals, and positioning herself to profit from my downfall. I was hurt, angry, and determined to prove I wasn't the fool she'd made me appear to be. He paused, letting his words sink in. The crowd was riveted. Enter Scarlett Monroe, a brilliant architect with extraordinary talent and absolute integrity. She walked into my life by accident, literally by entering the wrong hotel room, and in that moment I saw an opportunity, a solution, a way to rebuild my reputation quickly. Scarlett wanted to disappear, to run, to escape the 1,000 eyes now turning toward her with judgment and calculation. So yes, Will said, his voice ringing with conviction, I offered Scarlett a contract. I offered her money, career advancement, and access to my world in exchange for playing a role. And she accepted. Because she's ambitious, because she's smart, and because, like me, she understood the transactional nature of this city's elite circles. He stepped away from the podium, moving to the edge of the stage. The tabloids called her a gold digger, a social climber, a calculating opportunist who seduced me for a construction contract. And you know what? They were partially right. Scarlett did benefit from our arrangement professionally, but here's what the tabloids didn't tell you. Will's eyes found hers across the crowded room. Scarlett Monroe earned the Ashford Sustainable Development contract before I ever proposed our arrangement. Her design was selected by a panel of 5 architects and 3 board members, none of whom knew about our personal relationship. She won that contract on pure merit, on brilliant innovation, on years of hard work and extraordinary vision. I simply accelerated the timeline of her inevitable success. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Scarlett's throat tightened with emotion. Furthermore, Will continued, his voice hardening, the person who leaked our private contract to the tabloids wasn't some concerned citizen exposing fraud. It was Catherine Bordeaux, a woman scorned who decided if she couldn't destroy me through corporate espionage, she'd destroy me through character assassination. She weaponized Scarlett's ambition, my mistakes, and your prejudices to hurt us both. He pulled out his phone, and suddenly the screens around the ballroom flickered to life. Email exchanges appeared, Catherine's communications with a tabloid editor, detailing exactly how she'd stolen confidential information, exactly what she planned to leak, and exactly why. If I can't have Will, I'll make sure no one can, especially not some nobody architect who thinks she deserves him. The evidence was damning, definitive, and publicly displayed for 500 witnesses. Catherine Bordeaux is currently being investigated for corporate espionage, breach of confidentiality, and defamation, Will announced. Her actions cost her own company 3 major clients today alone. Justice, as they say, is served. The room erupted in conversation. Catherine's allies looked stricken, her enemies looked delighted, and Scarlett just felt numb. Vindicated, yes, but also exposed in ways she'd never imagined. But here's the real truth, Will said, and his voice softened, became intimate despite the crowd. The truth that matters more than contracts or tabloids or business arrangements. Somewhere between signing that agreement and standing here tonight, something unexpected happened. I fell in love. Scarlett's heart stopped. I fell in love with a woman who sees through my money and my name to the broken man underneath. I fell in love with someone who challenges me, inspires me, and makes me want to be better. I fell in love with Scarlett Monroe, not because of a contract, but despite it, not because of what she could do for me professionally, but because of who she is fundamentally. He stepped off the stage, walking directly toward her. The crowd parted like water. And 3 days ago, Will continued, never breaking eye contact, when the world was crucifying us both, when her reputation was being destroyed and my merger was at risk, Scarlett did something extraordinary. She tried to protect me, tried to take all the blame, tried to walk away so I wouldn't lose everything I'd built. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that Scarlett could see the vulnerability in his eyes, could feel the emotion radiating from him. But what she didn't understand, Will said softly, though his voice still carried through the silent ballroom, is that I'd already lost the most important thing. I'd lost her, and no merger, no business deal, no amount of money or power is worth that loss. Tears blurred Scarlett's vision. Will, let me finish. He took her hands, his touch gentle and sure. Scarlett Monroe, you are the strongest, most brilliant, most infuriating woman I've ever met. You don't need me. Don't need my money or my connections or my protection. You'd succeed spectacularly, all on your own. But here's what I'm hoping. His voice cracked slightly. I'm hoping you'll want me anyway. Not for what I can give you professionally, but for what we can build together personally. I'm hoping you'll take a chance on something real, something terrifying, something that has no contract, no exit clause, no safety net. He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. The room collectively gasped. This isn't the ring from our arrangement, Will said, opening the box to reveal a stunning emerald-cut diamond that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. That ring was a prop, a symbol of a transaction. This ring... He looked at her with such raw hope it shattered her. This ring is a promise, a real one. That I will love you, challenge you, support you, and never, never try to diminish you. That I will be your partner, not your benefactor, your equal, not your savior. Scarlett's tears fell freely now. You're insane. You're proposing. For real. In front of 500 people. Witnesses seemed appropriate. His smile was tremulous. Given our history of contracts and agreements, I wanted everyone to see this is real. See that I'm choosing you, publicly, permanently. Without escape clauses or termination dates. He dropped to one knee, and the gesture was so old-fashioned, so sincere, so utterly Will, that Scarlett's heart cracked wide open. Scarlett Monroe, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. Will you marry me? For real this time, for love, for always? Will you take a chance on us? The ballroom held its collective breath. Scarlett was aware of cameras, of whispers, of the fact that her answer would be replayed and analyzed and judged. But looking at Will, seeing his vulnerability, his hope, his absolute certainty, none of that mattered. You're right, she said, her voice strong and clear. I don't need you, don't need your money or your connections or your world. I built myself from nothing once. I can do it again. She paused, letting him see her truth. But Will Ashford, I want you. Want your terrible jokes and your brilliant mind and your broken pieces that somehow fit perfectly with mine. Want the man who proposed a fake engagement because he was hurting and then fell in love because he was brave. She pulled him to his feet, framing his face with her hands. So yes, I'll marry you for real, for love, for the terrifying, beautiful, complicated life we'll build together. Will's kiss was reverent and desperate and absolutely perfect. The crowd erupted in applause, but Scarlett barely heard it. She was lost in the taste of him, the feel of his arms around her, the certainty that this, finally, was exactly where she belonged. When they broke apart, Will slid the ring onto her finger. "No contract this time, just us." "Just us," she echoed, "though I have one condition." "Anything. My career remains mine. My success stays mine. We're partners, Will, but I'm not the CEO's wife. I'm Scarlett Monroe, award-winning architect who happens to love the CEO." His smile was brilliant. "I wouldn't have it any other way." 1 year later, Scarlett stood in the center of her completed sustainable development, the Ashford project that had started everything. The building rose like a living sculpture, glass and gardens intertwined, a testament to what happened when vision met opportunity. "Proud of you," Will said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "This is extraordinary." "It is, isn't it?" She accepted the glass, admiring her creation. "And I did it myself. Well, with a team of brilliant people, but you led them. Your vision, your achievement." He kissed her temple. "I'm just the man who gets to come home to the genius every night." Scarlett laughed. "Flattery." "Truth." He pulled her close. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Only 3 times." "Unacceptable." "I love you, Scarlett Ashford. I love your brilliance, your strength, your refusal to let anyone, including me, diminish you." "Ashford Monroe," she corrected. "We hyphenated, remember?" "How could I forget? You negotiated that clause harder than most corporate mergers." His eyes sparkled with amusement and admiration. "You're extraordinary." "You know that?" Scarlett looked at her building, her ring, her husband, the life she'd built, not because of a contract, but because she'd been brave enough to trust, to fight, to love without guarantees. "We're extraordinary," she corrected, "together." And standing there in the golden afternoon light, Scarlett understood the truth. She'd entered the wrong door that night in the hotel. But sometimes wrong doors lead to exactly the right life. Sometimes mistakes become miracles. Sometimes love finds you in the chaos and refuses to let go. Their story hadn't been perfect, hadn't followed the rules, had started with deception and ended with truth. But it was theirs. Real, messy, beautiful, and absolutely worth every risk they'd taken.